Hi, everybody. It's a beautiful night in beautiful Ottawa, Ontario. Winter, winter has come. Uh, there's a couple of questions tonight, and one of them is basically about dreams. And this comes from Lee Martin in Tennessee. Um, One of the things about dreams, there's so many things about dreams that there's on the market is just full of books about dreams. Um, but one of the things that might be basically helpful in looking at your dreams is to realize that the unconscious is basically trying to talk to you, not in a negative pattern at all, but in a very constructive pattern. The dilemma is that often you get dreams that are very cryptic, very much, could be a little bit scary as well. Could also be really great as well. Whatever would help you to come out of a deep sleep stupor. And that deep sleep stupor, of course, helps you really to get rest. But there is kind of a deep alpha state that those dreams can occur in that allows you to begin to see them fairly well. And one of the reasons why they're very cryptic is to get you to the point where you can allow yourself to recognize your relationship with the dream. In other words, come out into a state where you can at least vaguely remember what your dreams are. So the next step is to try and write them down if you have the opportunity to do so. And some I know of you have some kind of recording system that relates to writing dreams down. And so just try to use them the best you possibly can. Another method of remembering your dreams, of course, is to realize that if you can write one word down that might be helpful in your dreaming, uh, if you have your book handy, it might jar your memory and you can get other words that link to it and then slowly begin to remember the dream. It's really helpful. Normally, what a dream is trying to tell you is trying to broaden your scope to allow you to understand you broader than actually you do currently. And this is kind of reminiscent of allowing yourself to gain access to a conscious level that in your natural personality day to day that allows you to recognize how you enable yourself, how you protect yourself, how you, uh, the form that you've cultivated to survive here on these planes. It truly wants you to know you as you are. Um, then a deeper level can talk to you almost straight without having to change wording or change how you are willing to listen. This allows you to actually engage with, often people call it the soul, or a deeper state, a higher state relationship that can actually talk to you. And while you're engaging with life, just give you a growth spurt or a flash spurt of how you're doing that and why you're doing it and the need that you might have to pull back from that actual occurrence. This is very difficult to try and understand because of the cryptic concepts of the unconscious. Trying to, it's metaphorically trying to get you to understand deeper than you can, basically. A whole lot of words can be around that. Well, the basic idea here that Lee gave a dream. gave me a dream. And I think that dream is really very personal to Lee, and I don't think it would be helpful to talk about that particular dream. Um, but one thing he did suggest is um, that he did life map the dream, meaning when you create a triangular system with your hands and you open your hands first and point your hands, let's say at the solar plexus or in your imagination, pointing it directly in the direction of what you believe would be important. In other words, the general idea that you've constructed in your mind so that your dream makes sense to you, or the dream itself, as you can see it in your mind, in your imagination. And then asking for help for it from a higher state. Now, the dream itself with the life map will sometimes give you little bursts of understanding, not necessarily right away, but right in the midst of your day to day work, your day to day engagement, because it happens to be relating directly to the energy that you are that makes you up in your personality, physical, emotional, and mental structure that you've already constructed. And the unconscious, remember, is coming out of that deeper than you really understand yourself to be, and trying to expose some things there so that you can broaden your mental and emotional structure and see better that which lies within, with no designs on you negating any part of you. It's just how the construction works. It's a bit like looking at a coal mine, and there's stuff you dig the earth around it, and then you see a vein of coal or gold, for example. Gold is a better metaphor, of course. And you see that vein and you chip away at that gold. You get around the quartz and you can see the gold within that quartz line, and sometimes it's quite strong. And so you can take this material separate from the quartz. The quartz being what you already believe is conscious, what you've already decided your relationship with life is all about, how valid you are, how invalid you are, how you defend things, and all the rest of it. The goal is understanding the depth of a being that relates to all kinds of levels of engagement with consciousness, and trying to make sense of something beyond the peripheral structure that is so profoundly powerful we call our personality, and how we get locked into needing to be as we believe we need to be in terms of an identity. These things are really important, but it would help us to notice inside of us how we are there so we can see something deeper that would be really helpful in the understanding of others as well as ourselves. And it's as if you're blending and reaching into a deeper level so you can have a stronger link with that spiritual energy or the soul flow that enables you to do what you do. Okay, Lee, I'm going to leave that there because interpretation is one thing that is highly charged personally, and it's really important to look at stuff from a physical point of view, an emotional point of view, and a mental point of view. And it may be, and there are things under stress that are just indicating stress, and it might be helpful to understand the depth of how a person sees things as, as and kindly and respectful of the form that you have. So just with those hints, it might be helpful for you to engage and understand the dream from your own cognition. I wish you well with it, Lee. Just remember that the relationship that we all have with life is of great value, no matter what anyone seems to think it is. It's of great value. We need to be cognizant of how we function so the deeper levels can expose themselves and we can maintain a relationship with how we function, relatively speaking, broadening, engaging, and being okay within. I wish you well with that. Another one from, seems like things are coming from Nashville, which is really great. And they, via computer, so it's not long distance anymore. It's really amazing stuff. Wow. That is a joke, hopefully. I'm not sure, but maybe. This is from Chris McLaughlin. And she sent me two questions, actually. Question one, and then an amendment to question one. Thank you, Chris. I'll do the amendment and see if we can try to understand and clarify some of the stuff that Chris has concerns about. When I first started this meditation practice, I acquired the Life Map CD, as many others did, and I used it daily. And that was, if you remember, an engagement with attempting to open centers relatively slowly. And at that time, when I brought that CD out, it was in cassette first, but the CD then, and it was, we hadn't really started to open the hands very strongly. And the opening of the hands was started much after that. And we used the triangle behind the chest and turned that in our imagination towards the root center, then gonad center, solar plexus, heart center, throat, brow, and crown. And also, of course, the energy centers behind the neck and above the head. So we did that so that we could slowly open just a bit to have more energy coming through into these planes for the purpose of enabling us to slowly be more able to handle more energy. Rather than some folks trying to open these centers too fast, and then all kinds of difficulties begin to occur because it pressures the personality to handle more energy than it's normally used to handling. So slowly these centers begin to open, and then they become more sensitive to levels of consciousness that are dormant inside an individual, all individuals. So we're stimulating the system to allow a little less dormancy in terms of amount of energy that can come into the personality structure. The personality structure, of course, is created physically, emotionally, mentally, etherically, if you wish, magnetically, around the system so that you can have a reflexive, responsive system so that ultimately can broaden past the initial yoke holding of a being relative to what they decide they have to be like. And that's the image of a structure. This is quite normal. Talking about it the way I'm talking about it is just so that we can try to understand something a little bit beyond that. So slowly as that form, the personality form, broadens out, the individuality of an individual, the conscious awareness of an individual gets stronger. You become slightly more aware. Now, aware also of the environment, aware of yourself, and aware that energy systems are there, chakras, Sephiroth, whatever they may be, or valves, that have the capability of opening tremendously. Now, when I say that right away, many would say that their chakras are open tremendously. Keeping in mind that they link together, they've basically fused together in a manner that enables the persona or the individual way of engaging with life to stretch a bit so that they can begin to notice that they also have a deep intelligence within that is at first seemingly individual, but then more as if it's a perception that's broader than the individual personality that's already constructed. It's like an deeper than an insight, deeper than intuition. It's as if you are watching something. Now, the reason why I said you is because each individual is on a path towards opening that kind of awareness. Ultimately, it's less personalized. It's just there in relationship to a notation. You are perceiving something. The personality that you have already constructed attempts to understand it. And it is helped to understand something beyond itself, but not right away. At first, you understand basically relative to how you have developed your constructed system, mental system, emotional system, physical, to understand things. And therefore, instantly validating those things, they become true. In fact, they may or may not be true, but that doesn't really matter at the time. They become true based on the idea that your persona is literally only equipped to engage with ideas that you believe have to be true because they're yours. This is absolutely normal. Each and every one of us have the same thing happen to us. As more energy is able to come in consciously through this system, the mind expands. The emotional structure, as seen through the mind, expands. The perceptions around the physical form and in the physical form expands. You begin to recognize that you are looking through an eye or a lens that is physical, energetically engaged, magnetically, if you wish, or etheric, emotionally engaged as well and protected, and mentally protected as well until there is a broader perceiving that occurs as if it were in the brain, but outside the brain. You are perceiving the frequency that exists there. Yes, I agree with that. But the frequency becomes less important. The energy structure becomes quite important because various frequencies in various levels engage together to broaden out the system or the person, the energetic projected person that we consider ourselves here on these planes. Wow. How do I make that easier? It's a tough one, but we're getting towards the question that Chris is involved with here. As we perceive something, we often terminate our willingness to perceive past it. That's like a boundary. Until later, we perceive slightly broader than that. That's like an additional boundary, but now we have mm, two intersecting considerations. The difference between the first and the second one is a broadening of more energy coming in to allow us a broader view. We don't negate the first one, and if there is a third one, we don't negate the second one either. We realize slowly that there is a breadth of understanding that is occurring. There is an implication that the first two were right relative to the moment of their inception and our recognition. After that, the same is true. A broader perception continues. Most often, we put our focus on the rightness or the wrongness, good or badness of our perceptive expression. In other words, if somebody tells you they see it this way and you see it a certain way, your way is definitely more right until you recognize it as only an option. Later on, it becomes just an option. And you know it's an option, but you also know there's more beyond it. It causes a dilemma because it's involved with an identification structure that we call ego. Ego is, without any doubt, the most important thing that we can come up with. Whereas some think it's terribly not of great value. It's of great value until you notice it as a form that helps you to move past itself into another state. In other words, you are allowing yourself to be okay with perceiving beyond what you perceived before because of the recognition that this is normal. You can then perceive beyond that next state that you are already protecting within a second of its expression. You might not call it ego. You might call it something else. In consideration of additional states of perception, the state that you're in is always considered more important than other states. Therefore, you as an individual are important because you have those states. These levels go on and on and on until you are facing yourself within yourself and seeing that you must calm that aspect down, or it must be calmed, that aspect of possession, because it influences you to only regard things as valid as only you can perceive in a moment. Eventually, you allow yourself to be okay with perceiving beyond you. That is loosening the structure of physical, emotional, mental constructs so that you can allow yourself to be okay with understanding beyond what you can currently. This is induced by a flow of energy that operates through these chakras because these chakras work together. They're not separate from one another. And they work together slowly relative to the capacity of the individual to be okay with the energy in these planes, okay with the energy that is operating through them, and they can still function relatively okay in these planes. Sometimes you can't function the same way as you used to, and slowly you begin to do so because it's an infusion of force coming in, or love coming in, or energy coming in to broaden out your capacity as an individual being, still focusing on what was originating initially as a persona, as an individual structure that can survive on these planes, whatever that may be. It is a broadening, a bumping up of your capacity to engage with life in a way different than it was before, but still for the same purpose of survival here, plus aligning with and infusing or synthesizing your relationship with existence as it was, and broader, and continually broader with higher states. So now maybe we can attempt to continue on with Chris's question. I became more aware of my centers and found it very helpful in calming my emotions. That's the Life Map CD that she's talking about. And she meditates frequently and also lives life. Because living life is part of the handling of more energy coming in. I thought I could do the same with this new CD. I was surprised to find that I could not. My awareness does not seem to be refined enough to get a handle on what I am experiencing physically. Remember, we grow physically, etherically, magnetically, emotionally, mentally. All structures must be helped. And it's a slow process, but nonetheless, they must be helped and fused together for a purpose of creating a form that can handle higher state energy on these states for the purpose, I'll say it again, of helping others to do the same thing. Energy operates through you relative to what might be needed in another, as opposed to from your personality as an individual in full charge of the universe. No one likes to hear that last statement because it is a preferred thing to think of an individual's personas, versions, in full charge of the universe. And we are great because we exemplify spiritual engagement. That's kind of turning the egg upside down. It's the eye of the beholder. And the beholder's eye is still broadening, but it doesn't know it yet. We are just human beings. That's what we are. We are born here, we live here, and we will die here. It's a cycle of existence. It's what we are. The elevation of an individual relates to history, perhaps, relates to small little moments in life where some form of brilliance relative to here is considered valuable. And that's suggestive of normal. There's nothing wrong with that. But this is broadening into engaging with a sense of synthesizing orientation towards other states, which other states are coming in, linking and blending with these states so that these states can be lifted into a higher state relationship. So we can learn how to pull away from the self-importance that we have, while at the same time understanding that if we are engaged with helping, we are important in the scheme of things as all others are. So we're broadening a concept beyond self-interest into kind of a group recognition of enabling with each other helps others to broaden out. And this affects the whole of the species. This concept of species effects is very, very important, rather than individuals being important, or small groups of people who, a few thousand, thinking they're great. It's more helping the species that's important. So that in the initial stages of birth, more beings can come in for the hope of the species that can handle more frequencies. This has got to happen right in the midst of the species. And this is what spiritual growth is supposed to be a little bit about. So let me go on with Chris's question. My awareness does not seem to be refined enough to get a handle on what I'm experiencing physically. Not yet. But if you have a burst of growing, living life is the thing that helps you to broaden out your and understand, helps you to understand your relationship with being okay inside, physically, emotionally, and mentally. I feel an increase in vibratory energy around my body and an internal cold. I'm taking this piece by piece. Yes, that's what happens. You become aware of the vibratory level of each and every individual in these planes, initially, way beyond, perhaps a little beyond what you can handle, but then it softens down. And slowly you grow into it as if it's not so much anymore because you're used to it. The cold part is natural and normal. It either happens with either a little bit of heat or a little bit of cold inside. It's not outside cold, it's inside cold. It's as if the structures, the chakras, are opening in a particular way, and the energy, the personality's energy form is getting used to a little bit more than it's currently used to, right in the physical system, right in the emotional system, right in the mental construct, and how you bring them all together. This is a natural, normal effect. Slow and easy. That's actually slow. And that is fundamental to helping us slowly understanding that we have to live life and be happy, engage in it. Like it's like saying, hey, be happy. Oh boy, it's not quite the way it works. So we do our rendering of being happy, our version of it. And as we do these things, we come up with an understanding that's slightly different about life than what we had before. And we move in these general directions, which are broadening directions, as I was talking about earlier. And then the softening and the reminder of kindness to ourselves, because we start to be like a coach inside the personality. Easy does it now. Keep going, one step at a time. Oh, we're fine. Keep it going. Okay. The more you react, the more your tendency is to react. The more you soften, the more your tendency is to soften. It's a hard one because we're trained to do various things that are locked into our personality orientations. It's part of a protective system. You're just broadening out the protective system. In this case, she doesn't do that. But I just had to mention that along the line, just in case anybody out there did that kind of thing. So she says, I feel an increase in vibratory energy around my body and an internal cold, but I'm not sure where to balance and redirect. On these levels, your first place to do the balancing. Bringing the hands up, turn them on, bring them up, stretch them out underneath the armpits. First place to go is your solar plexus. It is a key player in the blending of the root, gonad, and solar plexus structures. That energy will move right up towards the top of the head as you roll your hands over, facing upward. First of all, rolling down. Second of all, moving upward. Trying to soften your attention while you're doing it. Asking for help from the higher states. Your version, of course. Very important that you use the belief that you have, that you believe is important to you initially. And then that will also broaden out. It will broaden out based on the softening that you are doing inside of you. It is really important to be okay with you and the constructs of your belief system around spirituality. They will shift and change. It will shift and change relative to you, not relative to somebody else and what they're telling you you have to believe. You grow through you. This is an important piece to understand. Others can help you increase that flow, but you still grow through you. You are a part of your growing process. So you have to be the one to encourage you, to be respectful of your growth and respectful of your continual engagement with you as a helper to you. Being okay with seeing you, and you will see you more as you are, but don't denigrate that stuff. Just soften it down a bit. Talk to yourself. Try not to do it on the street. Although all you have to do is put a couple of things in your ears and you can walk talking to yourself all you want. Nobody's ever going to notice these days. But you will notice. So I'm just a suggestion. Talk in your mind. And help you when you're on. You can talk to yourself if you want. It's okay. Hopefully you're okay. That's a joke. I'm not sure how to balance and where to redirect. Try to be aware above the head and behind you the best you can. The front of you will open easier than the back. As you do that, you'll notice more on the sides because the sides are opening as well. You're doing the balancing. Helps the chakras on the sides to be a little bit more, let's say, softer. Eventually, you'll start to know where to do the balancing. You'll notice especially energy across the upper part of the brow. You'll notice it stronger. You'll notice it just from that line across the upper part of the brow right through to about close to the center of your head towards the fontanelle, because that's the place where often the root, the gonad centers, and the solar plexus make their anchors. They get stronger there. Of course, they sift around and they move around, but that's where they make their anchors. And they will hold there a bit, soften down. Learn that your verbalizations will get a little more intense, then so you can hear them better. And you can use the life map to try and soften them down. What you're trying to do is, it's like you're starting a new life. Try not to disrespect anything. Don't disrespect the old life. Go forward, piece by piece. Be respectful of you and kind the best you possibly can. Your inclinations are all there. Your defenses are all there. You may have to notice and soften down a bit. Inclinations are what they are. But don't negate, please. Do your best. Best you possibly can. It's all you can do. You're a helper for you as well. She says, mentally, it's a different story. I was unable to perform my normal tasks or retain anything that was said to me after 5 days of straight use of the CD. And yes, my emotions were heightened. Well, here's a suggestion. Now you know that may be a little too much. Remember, on this CD, you're focusing about a foot to a foot and a half off the front of the brow. Then you're breathing in all the way back through the head, about a foot and a half behind, and then breathing out all the way through the back of the neck and through the front to the upper part of the chest, about a foot and a half. And you're doing that 2 or 3 times, and then you're relaxing, letting go, and meditating. That actual flow will help the system related to the personal orientations of our existence to be stimulated in a broader way. That's why the CD is so valuable. There's, at least partly, that's the reason. I would suggest that anybody who ever purchases this CD, I forget what it's called even. Marlene, do you know what it's called? We are not in a state of remembrance.
Blending with higher states.
Blending with higher states. That's it. That's the new one. You got to have a sense of humor in this stuff. I would suggest try it a couple of times a week. If it's a piece of cake, try it 3 times a week. If the cake has more icing on it, you'd prefer to forget using it, forget it for a couple of weeks. It just means there's a little bit more energy coming in. And we made a couple of changes in this one. Instead of just having music played, we used meditation with this music, infused it together, because it increases the amount of capacity that can flow through. And that was very, very helpful. So slow and easy, everybody. Just slow and easy. No negation in this. Just easy does it. It's trying to be helpful. Okay? My original question, she says, is similar in that I'm curious as to what is happening while building this link. You know, links are something. If you're building a real link, it's different than a belief link. And in every form of understanding of linking up with higher states, sometimes building a belief link is slightly slower, but it's really important. Little bit of energy can come in, and you can focus on the comfort that you feel and the love that you're reaching out with related to Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, Moses, what God, universal state, the golden ladder in the top rung, whatever your method is. And you're sincere about that method. Sincerity is really valuable. Sincerity is a form of honesty, and it's relative. Such a lot is talked about in terms of truth, reaching for truth. Reaching is a key word. It's relative. It's a relative word. Engaging with higher states just beyond what we're used to is a different coin. The link gets a little bit stronger, just a wee bit. Getting help from higher states is kind of a help beyond what is normal for you. Keeping in mind that you're fusing those higher states with the normal that you live with. You're not annihilating your being in consciousness. You're blending, fusing, synthesizing, getting used to, beginning to notice you differently than you could before, noticing that there is something, a way of seeing just slightly beyond where you can see. And that includes all of the extrasensory orientations. Just beyond that level quiets down a lot of stuff that is proposed to be highly spiritual. I'm not saying that those things that are proposed to be highly spiritual are negative at all. Some may think that. That is not what I'm saying. But those sensory systems become different than they were before. They're not engaged as personalized as they were before. They change their engagement and they move into an understanding that's broader than the importance of the individual, into the recognition and the relationship that it begins to occur between higher states and lower states. But lower states still make up their mind about what might be valid based on where they are. That one is a hard statement to let go. Same as Lee's dreams or your dreams. Often metaphorical interaction is vital, but to open the mind to allow metaphor to exist, there has to be a quietening of the emotional disposition's version of what must be true. A quietening doesn't mean eradication. It means quieting so that other options can be available, so that understanding can exist beyond where you had it before, with no negation to what you had before. That's what options mean. This is very difficult for all of us, but perhaps important, but not as comforting. But what we need to understand about comforting is that once we begin to be comforted by higher states, we feel the love of an engagement with the higher state, even though we're still not perfect in our relationship with these planes. And imperfection is normal on these planes. So those who are helping in all different ways are helping the best they can. No negation is important in this. But we're highly charged with competition. Who's most this and who's most that? That isn't how those higher states work. But it is how beings work who are stimulated by higher states and still focused on the importance of the individuality of others as well as ourselves. Individuality is not necessarily another word for independence. As a matter of fact, in higher states, there is a link up, a broadening link up that relates to a recognition and an interaction with others for the purpose of broadening out capacity to be helpful, for example, to species like ours, or helpful to us so that we can understand broader than we could before these rational and irrational ways of understanding what very high states must look like. I think that growth is slow and easy. And I think, obviously, as we look across the world, the world of ideas, the world of philosophies, the world of engagements with what is right versus wrong, good versus bad, we run into horrendously difficult territories. We politicize much, and I mean by that our relationship with devaluation and evaluation, rather than development and movement and the help of others in other groups and their help or possible help within ourselves. This is a very difficult territory for human beings to deal with because we are so influenced by our past. And our past has developed into a state where perhaps receptivity to a different understanding might be possible. Let's hope that's so. Let's hope we can get to the point where we can actually have an option broader than the ones we insist we must have. I wish you all really a very good evening and happy growing. You too, Chris. You too, Lee. Good night.